three back there. They're doing well. Anyway, last week I focused on mistakes made by Ants Canada and Lights Camera Ants, and this week I'm going to go over one big mistake that I myself have made in the past year or so. And yeah, it's a pretty big one. I've had my Mesobarbarus colony for about 2 years now, and they've had essentially no overall growth. They've had periods of, declining in worker count, and also periods of growing in worker count and doing well. But overall, they've kind of just stayed the same. And now I've realised why. I've been keeping this Mesobarbarus colony in an ant kit ant home plus a size 2 ant kit acrylic nest. How the ant home works is you have a outworld at the top and then a test tube dock at the bottom and the ant's nest in the test tube. This makes it pretty inconvenient when the water in the tube has ran out, but the colony isn't really ready to move on to another level, a bigger setup. So you have to do this, really stressful maneuver where you take out the test tube with the ants still inside it, dump it in the outworld, and then put a new test tube in the bottom, which pretty much guarantees escapees. So I added the ant kit acrylic nest to the setup, which they did use for a while, but now they don't really use it for seeds or eggs, and I think I know why. According to the Colonialist's Care Guide on Mesobarbarus, my keystone of truth in this mad world, Mesobarbarus require brood and bred chambers between a humidity of 50 and 70%, and this allows brood to develop and also for ant bread to be chewed, which, feeds the brood. I'm a lyrical miracle, like AntScapes back in the day. Ask him about it. The ants also require a storage area between 10 and 50% humidity. This is used for storing seeds in a way that they don't germinate and thereby, change all their useful proteins that they have inside the seed into useless cellulose that the ants can't really feed on or digest. I think the entire setup I've been keeping them in is well below the humidity that they need for making ant brood and brood developing. The test tube has run out of water, and I thought that was okay to have it that way for a few weeks before replacing it, because I thought that the ant kit nest provided enough humidity, for the ants to raise their brood and everything. This is the sponge used to hydrate the nest, and it's looking very crusty and musty, but every time I watered it, it did this. The water just came out of the top as though it was already full of water, which was surprising because sometimes I would go, weeks between hydrating and it would still, look like it was full. But it's just occurred to me now that whatever crusty, musty thing that's been growing on the sponge might be taking up all the volume inside the sponge chamber, meaning that when I watered it, it wasn't full of water, it was full of this crusty, musty sponge stuff, which means that the ants haven't been getting the humidity that they need to chew ant bread, which is, pretty much the whole point of Messer's adaptations. This is completely, my fault, my issue, and I kind of feel really stupid now. And I understand that I'm the reason that my colony hasn't been doing well. So naturally I should move them out, right? However, it's approaching hibernation. However, some Messers don't hibernate, apparently, depending on where they're from. And apparently it's unclear whether or not hibernating your Messer actually does anything in the way of long-term health and growth. And it's all just... I don't know what to do. So I gave the Mesobarbarus a fresh test tube in the outworld that they could nest in, because I wasn't, ready to do the whole, plugging in the new one under and dealing with like 30 escapees. But this test tube in the top outworld is more of a band-aid fix to the outlying issue, just like how universal basic income does not, fix the fundamental problems of capitalism. Will it be more harmful to move the ants out during a time where they're supposed to be hibernating, or not supposed to be hibernating, depending on which resources you look at, compared to the benefits of the new setup that has the proper humidity? I don't know. Tell me in the comments. please, I need guidance. Now, on a lighter note, let's go to my other colonies. My Lasius niger colony is going to be going into hibernation next week, so stay tuned for that video. Let's give them a few mealworms to tide them over so I don't have to feed them that much and interrupt them during hibernation. Unsurprisingly, they haven't moved into their Aesthetic Ants mesh nest, but I didn't really expect them to. But in the next anting season, as this colony grows in worker count and amount of eggs and brood that it needs to store, I think that will be moving in. My Nicobarensis colony is doing pretty great, and I expect that they'll be in a huge setup within the next year or two. Maybe like an 80cm planted vivarium, and oh yeah, I have one of those. The 80cm tank, I mean, I don't have the vivarium. I'll probably just pester AntScapes until he tells me exactly what to buy for that planted vivarium when the time comes. These ants are pretty much perfect. Quickly growing, polymorphic, great appetite, good looking, just all around perfect. These ants will be moving out of their ant kit nest in roughly a month into either a mini planted vivarium in a smaller tank than the 80cm, or into this Aesthetic Ants nest, the original one that he sent me. You know, the one that's been discontinued because of recurring escape issues. What do you mean it's a bad idea? It's a great idea. Let's give the ants a few mealworms, and that's a pretty good response. Let's check in again in about half an hour. Oh, good evening, gentlemen. I think I should pop in a few more mealworms. Speaking of popping in a few more mealworms, I should get cockroaches again. What happened to the original cockroaches, you say? Well, you know, it's just, let's just not talk about this right now. Onto the Myrmecarubra, and yeah, they are the same that they've always been. Fun to keep, pretty, not growing quickly, but not exactly growing slowly either. Just, yeah, very pleasant to keep. A few plants that I originally planted are dying now, I think due to issues that I took cuttings of the leaves and they just didn't really root into the soil properly, so I may end up buying some plants to put in here. Let's give them a few mealworms too. I've noticed that the amount of springtails in this setup just keeps going up and up and up. And as for the isopods that I put in, I can't really see them. They might be living underground, you know, feeding on old mealworm carcasses, or they may have been killed by the ants. Yeah, they've probably been killed by the ants. That might explain why the ants aren't really going for the mealworm that much. My two Lasius flavus colonies, Yin and Yang, who I still don't know which one is which. And by the way, I have no intention of knowing which one is which. It's going to be like up to your interpretation to guess which one is Yin and Yang. So funny. Anyway, my two Lasius flavus colonies have burrowed into the core of their setup, presumably to get away from the light. The colonies are doing pretty well, though one I've noticed is, you know, going out and foraging a bit more than the other. That could be that the colony is slightly bigger, or it could be that, you know, something in their genetics is just more outgoing, which is interesting. I don't know where my cousin who caught them from. They could be, you know, two different ends of a park. But if I'm honest, it's probably just different population. Let's give them a Biformica liquid feeder each, filled with Biformica ant nectar. This should tide them over for the winter as far as carbs are concerned, so I'll only have to feed them a mealworm maybe once or twice. And with that said, if you enjoyed this video or you learned something, then like and subscribe. If you didn't, then don't, and I'll see you in the next video. No, I didn't do that right. Or should I? Ooh, it's the cap for the lens.